The day Declan Monroe got evicted was the same day his 5-year-old son asked if dinner could be something with cheese, like the rich kids have. Declan crouched down beside little Tanner, brushing back his messy brown hair. "We'll figure it out, buddy. I promise." He didn't say it was the third promise he'd made this week that he had no idea how to keep. The landlord didn't even knock when he showed up with a notice and a pair of board movers. Declan begged for an extra week, even 3 days, but the man just shook his head and pointed to the overdue balance 2 months behind. Declan's job at the auto shop barely covered food and gas. After Danny left 3 years ago, taking her career dreams and zero custody interest with her, he'd been doing everything alone. He didn't mind. Tanner was worth every sleepless night. Still, it was hard not to feel like a failure when you're stuffing your kids' clothes into trash bags and wondering if the back seat of your truck could count as a place to sleep. "Where are we going?" Tanner asked from his booster seat, hugging his stuffed fox. Declan forced a smile. "Just taking a little adventure tonight." They ended up at a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind with flickering lights and vending machines that only took coins. Declan paid for 1 night in cash and promised himself he'd fix everything tomorrow. He'd find an extra job, beg his boss for more hours, something. But the next morning, something else found him. He was at the diner across from the shop, sipping coffee he couldn't afford, when a woman approached. Blonde, polished, wearing a sleek black suit that did not belong on this side of town. "Declan Monroe?" she asked. He stood slowly, confused. "Yeah. My name is Olivia. I work for the Whitmore Family Trust." He blinked. "The what?" She opened a folder. "You're the biological brother of Zachary Whitmore. Your birth records were sealed, but recent legal changes allowed us to locate you. Your brother has been actively searching." Declan's mouth opened, then closed. "I don't have a brother." "You do," she said gently. "You were adopted at birth. Your files confirm it." Declan didn't know what to say. He had no memory of anyone but his mom, who passed years ago, and the foster dad, who'd kicked him out at 16. "Zachary Whitmore is requesting to meet you," she continued. "He's in New York. I can arrange transportation." He shook his head, overwhelmed. "I'm sorry. I have a kid. I can't just." "Your son is welcome." "In fact," Mr. Whitmore insisted. Declan looked at her like she was speaking another language. "Why would a stranger want to meet me?" She gave a small smile. "Because he says you're the only family he has left." 3 days later, Declan was walking into a marble-floored penthouse on the 64th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, holding Tanner's hand. He'd seen expensive things on TV. But this place floor-to-ceiling windows, a chandelier that looked like it cost more than his yearly income, and a view of Central Park so perfect it felt fake it didn't look real. And then, Zachary Whitmore walked in. Tall, sharp suit, dark hair, piercing gray eyes. A man who looked like he belonged in magazines. "Declan." His voice cracked slightly. Declan turned slowly. "That's me, I guess." Zach didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and pulled Declan into a hug. Declan stood frozen, unsure what to do with his arms. "I've been looking for you for years," Zach said quietly. "You have no idea." Declan pulled back, stunned. "Why?" "Because I was adopted too," Zach said. "I found out about you when my adoptive dad passed. He left a letter. Said I had a twin." Declan stared. "A twin?" Zach nodded. "I hired investigators. It took years to unseal things. But I never gave up. It was too much. Too fast." Declan sat heavily on a velvet chair. "This is insane." "I know," Zach said, kneeling down to Tanner's level. "Hey there, buddy." Tanner clutched his fox. "Are you a robot?" Zach laughed. "Nope. Just a guy who's really happy to meet you." Declan crossed his arms. "So what now? You just bring us here, and then what?" "We go home." Zach's expression softened. "You don't have to go anywhere. I want you to stay. As long as you want." Declan's stomach twisted. "I'm not a charity case." "You're my brother," Zach said simply. "And I don't let family sleep in motels." It took Declan 2 days to stop checking over his shoulder. Zach was patient. He didn't push. But slowly, Declan saw flashes of what life could be like. Real food in the fridge. A bed that didn't squeak. A babysitter certified, warm, and way overqualified who watched Tanner while Declan finally got a full night's sleep. And then there was her. Dahlia Morgan. Zach's estate manager, and the most infuriating, captivating woman Declan had ever met. She was sharp-tongued, detail-obsessed, and way too pretty to be real. The first time they spoke, she was correcting him about leaving dirty dishes in the sink. "This isn't a frat house," she said coolly, arms crossed. "It's not a prison either," he shot back. "I can wash a plate later." She raised a brow. "You've got sauce crusted on porcelain imported from Italy. You'll wash it now." Declan chuckled under his breath. "You always like bossing people around. Only when they need it." He should have hated her. But instead, she got under his skin in a way that felt dangerous. And when she wasn't scolding him about dishes, she was reading to Tanner in the library, her voice soft and animated like she actually cared. Declan caught himself watching her more than once. He didn't belong here. Not really. But when she looked at him, sometimes it felt like maybe he could. Maybe this wasn't just Zach's world anymore. Maybe there was room in it for him. And maybe, just maybe, there was room for love too. The first time Declan saw the estate's rooftop garden, he nearly turned right back around. He hadn't expected it to be so quiet. A long stretch of greenery stretched along the top of the building, manicured hedges lining stone pathways, and a glass gazebo sat in the center like something out of a movie. The city buzzed far below, but up here, it felt like a different planet. He was supposed to meet Zach for lunch, but instead, he found Dahlia placing a silver tray on a marble table inside the gazebo. "You're early," she said, not looking up as she adjusted the placement of a linen napkin. "Guess I didn't know there was a dress code for lunch," Declan said, glancing down at his jeans and t-shirt. "You're fine," she replied, finally meeting his eyes. "Zach's running late. He asked me to keep you company." He leaned against the doorway. "Let me guess. You volunteered so you could lecture me about using the wrong towel in the guest bathroom." She gave him a sideways glance. "Actually, I volunteered because I thought maybe you could use a friend." He blinked. "Is that what you are? A friend?" "I haven't decided yet," she said, folding her arms. Declan let out a low laugh. "You always this warm and fuzzy with people?" "No," she said plainly. "But you confuse me." He raised a brow. "How so?" "You're not like anyone I've met in Zach's world. You don't care about appearances. You don't flinch around money. But you also don't want help, even when you clearly need it." He crossed his arms. "That's not confusing. That's called being a grown man who's been burned too many times." She tilted her head slightly. "Maybe. Or maybe you're just scared someone might actually believe in you." Declan's jaw tightened. "You don't know me. I know what it looks like when someone's been surviving so long, they forgot how to live." Before he could reply, Tanner's voice called out from down the path, carried by the wind. "Dad, there's a butterfly the size of my hand." Declan turned to see his son running toward them, escorted by a young woman from the estate staff. Tanner skidded to a stop and pointed toward a flower bed. "It landed on that purple one. But then it flew away." Declan crouched beside him. "We'll try to find it again after lunch, all right?" Tanner nodded, still wide-eyed. "This place is crazy. Did you see the fish pond?" "I did," Declan said, ruffling his son's hair. "Pretty cool, huh?" As the staffer led Tanner into a nearby shaded area with juice and coloring books, Declan looked back at Dahlia. "You work for Zach, right? What exactly do you do?" "I manage the estate," she said. "Staff, maintenance, event planning, travel logistics, basically anything that keeps this place from falling apart." "And he trusts you with all that?" She gave him a steady look. "I earned it." He nodded slowly. "So you've been here a while." "Almost 6 years." He studied her. "You like it?" "I like being in control of something that makes sense," she said. "Buildings follow rules. Schedules stay on track. People, not so much." Declan leaned back against the column. "Yeah, people are messy." She glanced at Tanner, then back at him. "He's lucky to have you." Declan's voice dropped. "I don't always feel like I'm enough. Especially here." Her expression shifted, for once losing its usual precision. "That's the first honest thing you've said to me." "I'm always honest." "No, you're guarded. That's different." Before he could respond, Zach finally arrived, walking briskly down the path with his sleeves rolled up and an apology already forming on his lips. "I hate being late," he said, clapping Declan on the shoulder. "Got pulled into a call with Tokyo." "You good?" "Yeah," Declan muttered. "Just getting psychoanalyzed by your estate manager." Zach grinned. "She does that." Dahlia didn't deny it. Over lunch, Zach talked about an upcoming gala, something about board members, and a new charity initiative. Declan tried to follow, but his mind kept drifting to Tanner, who was laughing with the staffer, and then to Dahlia, who seemed to be studying him when she thought he wasn't looking. Later that afternoon, While Tanner napped in the guest suite and Zach took another business call, Dahlia found Declan in the library. He was flipping through a book on architecture, not reading it. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. I need to ask you something. He looked up. I don't owe you rent if that's what this is about. She didn't smile. Have you thought about what you want to do? With what? Your life? Your future? You're not a guest here forever. Eventually, you'll have to decide. Declan rubbed a hand over his face. I don't know. I've never had a future to plan for. I worked, I paid bills, I kept my kid fed. That was it. So now that you're not surviving every second, what do you want? He stared at her. Why do you care? Because if you stay here and do nothing, you'll resent it. And if you leave without trying, you'll regret that more. He stood slowly. You really think you've got me all figured out, don't you? No, she said. But I think you matter. And I'm not the only one. She turned and left without waiting for a reply. That night, Declan stood on the balcony outside his suite, watching the city lights flicker like stars. He thought about everything she'd said. About Tanner. About Zach, who had given him space without pressure. About the strange pull he felt around Dahlia, complicated and sharp-edged and undeniable. He didn't belong in this world. Not really. But maybe, just maybe, he could build something new in it. Something real. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like running from it. Declan stood in front of the mirror in the guest suite's walk-in closet, staring at the tailored black tuxedo hanging from the door. It looked like something a movie star would wear. The note pinned to the lapel read, "Required attire. You'll be fine. Z." He almost laughed. Almost. It had been a week since Zach dropped the bomb about the Whitmore Foundation's annual gala, an event so exclusive even the guest list had a security clearance. Declan didn't want to go. He didn't belong in rooms with crystal chandeliers and people who used the word legacy like it was a currency. But Zach had insisted, and Tanner's eyes had gone wide when he heard there'd be chocolate fountains and an ice sculpture shaped like a lion. That sealed it. Tanner would be in good hands tonight. Zach had arranged for a full-time nanny, someone Dahlia personally vetted. Declan had met her twice. She was warm, organized, and had somehow convinced Tanner to eat broccoli without bribery. That alone made her a miracle worker. Declan finished dressing, tugged at the stiff collar, and headed down to the lobby, where a black car waited. Dahlia stood beside it, already dressed in a gown so sleek and sculpted it looked like it had been made from shadows and starlight. She turned as he approached, arching a brow. You clean up better than I expected. He adjusted his cuff. You sound surprised. I am. I thought you'd bail. I tried. Zach threatened to send a helicopter to drag me there. She stepped into the car without another word, and he followed. The interior smelled like leather and citrus, too pristine to touch. For a moment, neither of them spoke as the city rolled past the windows. You've been quiet, she said finally. I don't have anything clever to say tonight. Good. The last thing this evening needs is another fake charm act. He turned to her. You saying I'm charming? I'm saying you pretend to be. But tonight, you don't have to. Just be real. That's rare here. He studied her features in the dim light. Is that why you're still working for my brother? Because he's real? She hesitated. No. I stay because he gave me a shot when no one else would. I was 23, broke, and furious at the world. He saw past all of it. He leaned back slightly. And now you manage billion-dollar properties. And occasionally babysit the long-lost brother who won't stop questioning everything. He chuckled under his breath. I'm not trying to be difficult. Yes, you are. But at least you're honest about it. The car pulled up to the entrance of the Whitmore Foundation's primary event space, a restored opera house lit with gold uplighting and a carpet so red it looked like velvet. Paparazzi stood behind ropes, cameras flashing in rapid bursts. Declan's breath caught. You've got to be kidding me. You'll be fine, Dahlia said, already stepping out and offering her hand. Just don't trip. He took it, and the cameras exploded with light. Inside, the transformation was staggering. Marble columns gleamed under chandeliers that looked hand-blown. Waiters in tuxedos carried trays of champagne and amuse-bouches he couldn't pronounce. A string quartet played in the mezzanine above. Zach spotted them instantly and crossed the grand hall, nodding at donors as he passed. He looked completely at ease, like this had always been his world. Glad you made it, Zach said, clapping Declan on the back. Dahlia, you look well. She gave him a polite nod. Don't sound so shocked. Declan took a flute of champagne from a passing tray. How long do I have to pretend I know what I'm doing? Just long enough to meet the board, Zach said. After that, you can disappear into the dessert room. I'm holding you to that. Zach led them toward a cluster of people near the staircase, men and women in designer suits and gowns, each one more polished than the last. They shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and said things like market volatility and succession planning. Declan did his best to stay quiet. But then someone asked him, "So what do you do, Mr. Monroe?" He felt Dahlia tense beside him before he replied. "I was a mechanic." There was a pause. "A mechanic," the man repeated, as though he'd misheard. Declan nodded. "Yeah, I fixed engines, changed oil, kept people moving." Another woman chimed in. "And now you're part of the Whitmore legacy?" "I guess so," Declan said, still figuring out what that means. Her smile faltered. "Isn't that a bit unconventional?" Dahlia's voice sliced through the air. "Isn't innovation always unconventional?" The group blinked, then laughed lightly, unsure whether it was a compliment or a warning. Declan turned to her as the crowd dispersed. "Nice save." "I wasn't saving you," she said. "I was saving the conversation." He leaned down slightly. "You always this diplomatic?" "No. Only when I'm surrounded by people who'd faint if they saw a wrench." Later that night, after the speeches and auctions, after Zach made his rounds and Declan had politely declined caviar twice, he found Dahlia standing alone near the balcony. He joined her, the two of them looking out over the city. "I'm not sure I can ever get used to this," he admitted. "You're not supposed to get used to it," she replied. "You're supposed to decide what part of it matters." He turned to her. "And what part matters to you?" "I used to think it was the control, the way everything fit together. But now," she trailed off, then met his eyes. "Now I think it's the people. The ones who surprise me." He studied her. "Are you saying I surprise you?" "I'm saying I didn't expect to care whether you stayed or not." Declan's heart thudded once, hard. "You've got a way of saying impossible things like they're facts," he said. "And you've got a way of pretending you don't care when you do." He looked down at her, the noise of the party fading into a low hum behind them. "What if I said I'm not pretending anymore? Then I'd say it's about time." Before either of them could say another word, one of the event coordinators rushed over, whispering something into Dahlia's ear. Her expression changed instantly, professional, focused. "There's an issue with the donor ledger," she said to Declan. "I need to handle it." He nodded. "Go. I'll find my way back to the dessert room." She hesitated, then pressed a hand briefly to his chest. "Don't disappear." As she walked away, Declan turned back to the city skyline. He hadn't expected her to care. He hadn't expected to care so much in return. But now that he had, nothing about this world felt quite so impossible anymore. Declan didn't see Dahlia again that night. She didn't return to the balcony, and by the time he'd made his awkward rounds back through the gala hall, Zach informed him she'd left to handle a call from the estate's legal team. Something about a property dispute overseas connected to the foundation's land holdings. Declan nodded like he understood, but really, all he heard was, she was gone. The car ride back to the penthouse was quiet. Tanner was already asleep upstairs, curled in bed with his fox toy. Declan checked on him, pulled the covers up, and turned off the light. The next morning came with a text from Zach. "Meet me in the study. We need to talk." Declan found his brother pacing, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. "I'm stepping down from the board," Zach said without preamble. Declan leaned against the doorway. "You what?" "I'm restructuring the family trust," Zach explained, eyes sharp with conviction. "I've been thinking about it for months. I don't want to run this like my father did. I want to build something different. Smarter. More grounded." "Okay, but why tell me?" "Because I want you involved." Declan blinked. "Involved how?" "Help me rebuild it. From the inside. You've got instincts I don't. You see things I miss. You're direct. Grounded. I fix cars." Zach shook his head. "You fix problems. You know people. You know what matters." Declan folded his arms. "And you think that qualifies me to manage your empire?" "I think it qualifies you to help reshape it." Declan hesitated. "What about the board? Your investors? They'll either get on board or get out of the way." "And Dahlia?" Zach paused. "She's already adapting. But she's not the reason I'm doing this." "She's part of it, though." Zach gave a knowing look. "You think I haven't noticed?" Declan pushed off the wall. "It's not like that." Zach raised both brows. "Okay," Declan muttered. "It's almost like that." "Talk to her," Zach said, "before you assume it can't work." Later that afternoon, Declan found Dahlia in the East Wing lounge, seated with a thick binder open across her lap, typing notes into her tablet. She didn't look up when he sat beside her. You left early last night. There was a land rights issue in Morocco. He nodded. You always this calm under pressure? I have to be. He watched her fingers slow on the keyboard. Zach told me about the changes he's making. I know, she replied. He asked for my input. He asked for mine too. She stopped typing. I told him I'm thinking about it, Declan continued. But I'd be stepping into a world I don't understand. You think I understood it when I started? She asked. I stayed up all night learning tax codes and asset structures. I studied until my eyes hurt. You adapt. You learn. And if I fail, then you fail forward. No one here expects perfection. He exhaled through his nose. You do. I expect honesty and effort. You've already proven both. He looked at her. You trust me? She turned to face him fully. I didn't at first. I thought you'd crash through this place and leave it worse. But then I saw how you looked at your son. How you listened when no one else did. She closed the binder. I trust you now. I don't want to be just a guest here anymore, he said quietly. Then don't be. I mean really stay. Build something. Not just for me. For Tanner. Dahlia nodded once, slowly. Then build it. He took a breath. With you. Her eyes met his without flinching. That's not part of the job description. I'm not offering a job. I'm offering something else. She studied him like she was assessing a risk. You sure you're ready for that? I'm tired of pretending I'm not. Dahlia didn't answer with words. Instead, she leaned in, her lips brushing his with a gentleness that surprised him. Like she wasn't trying to make a statement, she just needed to know he was real. When she pulled back, her voice was lower. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for you to stop running. He reached for her hand. Then I guess it's time to stand still. 2 weeks later, the Whitmore Foundation officially announced its restructuring. The press release named a new advisory board composed of diverse voices, including Declan Monroe, Strategic Development Liaison. Zach stood beside him as reporters shouted questions, smiling like he'd been preparing for this moment his whole life. Declan wore a suit that fit better than the one from the gala. Tanner clutched his hand, dressed in a miniature version of it, beaming like he'd just won a trophy. After the press conference, they returned to the penthouse for a quiet dinner. Dahlia was already waiting at the table, seated beside a crystal vase filled with wildflowers. She wore something soft and pale, her hair down for once. Tanner launched into stories about his school interview, how the new tutor let him build a volcano out of foam. He talked with his hands, animated and bright, as if he'd always lived this kind of life. Declan watched him, heart full. Later that night, as Tanner slept and the city glowed below, Declan stood on the rooftop garden, hands in his pockets. Dahlia joined him, her heels quiet on the stone path. You look like you're thinking too hard, she said. I'm wondering how I got here. She stood beside him, their shoulders brushing. You belonged here the moment you walked in. I didn't believe that. I did. He turned toward her. You still do. She nodded. Enough for both of us. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a slim box, opening it to reveal a simple ring, no diamonds, no flash. Just a single band of silver, engraved with a date. The night we met, he said. The night everything changed. Dahlia's breath caught. You don't have to do this now. I do. Because I don't want to lose another minute thinking I have time. She took the ring, her fingers trembling slightly. Yes. Declan laughed under his breath. I didn't even ask yet. You didn't have to. He pulled her against him, her head resting against his chest. For the first time in his life, Declan wasn't surviving. He was living, and he wasn't alone anymore. Close your eyes. Dahlia's brows lifted, but she obeyed, standing barefoot on warm wooden planks beneath the morning sun. A breeze lifted the hem of her robe as she stood on the private terrace of their newly renovated estate, an entire wing of the Whitmore penthouse now converted into a family home. Declan stood behind her, Tanner's sleepy giggles echoing from inside, where he was coloring with the nanny. Declan gently placed her hand on the brass door handle. Okay, he said. Now open them. She pushed the door inward and froze. The room was flooded with light. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around a space that hadn't existed 3 weeks ago. Pale oak floors, a reading nook tucked beneath a curved arch of bookshelves, and a large custom-built desk that faced the skyline. But what caught her breath was the wall to the left, an entire section covered with neatly arranged shelves, each filled with organized binders, blueprints, and color-coded files. Her heart caught in her throat. You built me an office, she whispered. Declan stepped beside her. Not just an office. A command center. You've been running empires from the hallway with a laptop and a clipboard. You deserve this. She turned to him slowly, eyes wide. Declan, I talked to Zach. He agreed to make you a partner in the Foundation's strategic division. Not just the estate anymore. You've already been doing half the work. She stared at him, stunned. You didn't have to. I wanted to. I see what you do. I see what you are. And if I'm building a life here, I want to build it with you at the center. Her voice wavered. You actually thought about the file shelving system. I asked the carpenter to match the spacing to your old ones. I measured them myself. She let out a shaky breath. You remembered. He reached for her hand. I remember everything. Behind them, Tanner's voice called out, announcing the arrival of pancakes and an accidental syrup spill. Dahlia laughed, wiping her eyes. Declan leaned in, brushing his lips against her temple. I love you. She pressed her forehead to his. I love you more than anything I ever planned for. That night, after Tanner had fallen asleep curled between them during a movie marathon, Declan gently lifted him and carried him to his room. When he returned, Dahlia was waiting in bed, hair loose over her shoulders, the glow of the city outlining her silhouette. She propped herself on one elbow. Do you ever miss your old life? He slid in beside her. Sometimes. The quiet. The simplicity. But then I remember how hard it was to breathe back then. I didn't even know I was drowning until I got pulled out. She reached for his hand beneath the blanket. You saved yourself. He kissed her knuckles. You helped me believe I could. The next morning brought a letter from the Foundation's board and unanimous vote to accept the restructuring proposal submitted jointly by Zach, Declan, and Dahlia. Included was a personal note from the chairwoman, thanking them for bringing heart back into legacy. Later that week, they hosted a small gathering at the estate, not a gala, not a press event, just a dinner. Friends, a few key partners, and people who'd helped them get here. Tanner wore a paper crown and declared himself CEO of Dessert, which no one objected to. Declan stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, helping with dishes while Dahlia dried. He reached for the next plate, then paused. You ever think we'd end up here? He asked. She smiled. Not once. I used to think love was something that passed you by if you were too busy surviving. You were wrong. Yeah, he said, handing her the final plate. I was. On a crisp spring afternoon a month later, they stood beneath an arched canopy of flowering trees in the private garden Zach had turned into a wedding space. There were no hundreds of guests, just a handful of people who mattered. Tanner stood proudly beside them in a little suit, holding the rings. Dahlia wore a dress that shimmered like moonlight and refused to let anyone else walk her down the aisle. I've always walked where I needed to go, she'd said. Today's no different. Declan's vows were simple. You're the first place I've ever truly belonged. Dahlia's were quieter. You gave me something I never thought I wanted. A home I didn't have to build alone. They kissed beneath a rain of white petals, and for the first time, Declan didn't feel like he had to brace for what came next. What came next was life. Tanner started school that fall, already 2 grades ahead in reading. Dahlia transitioned into a hybrid role, half estate manager, half director of operations for the revamped Whitmore Foundation. She found joy in the balance, spreadsheets and bedtime stories, meetings and morning walks with Declan. Declan took on a new project, building a skills training center in Brooklyn for single parents trying to get back on their feet. Funded by the foundation, designed by Declan himself. He named it Fox House, after the toy Tanner refused to sleep without. Sometimes, on quiet nights, they sat on the rooftop garden where it all began. No tuxedos, no speeches, just the 3 of them, a deck of cards, and the city glittering around them. I used to think love had to be earned, Declan said one evening, watching Tanner chase fireflies. It doesn't, Dahlia replied. But the good kind is chosen. Every day. He pulled her closer. Then I'll keep choosing you. And he did. Every day after that.